Okay, hello, my name is Julia Baldwin, and this is my midterm project part 2. My topic was Michelangelo versus Leonardo da Vinci. In this project, I'll cover the backgrounds of both of the artists, the lives they led, the styles of them, and then some famous works of each one. Again, like I just said, each artist will have a background, life, style, and impact, famous works, which 4 of them for each of them, and then ending with divine rivalry, which will explain the relationship between the 2 artists. Okay, starting with Michelangelo. There's some information on him on the side. I'll brief it. He was born on March 6th in Caprese near Arezzo, Tuscany. His family owned a business. He was an Italian sculptor, painter, architect, and poet, and he was famous during the High Renaissance movement. Here's a briefing of his life. At 6, he was sent to a grammar school, but he showed no interest in schooling, so his father ended up sending him to train as an apprentice at 13. He learned the technique of fresco. He spent only a year at the workshop, however, and he moved into a palace to study classical sculptures with the Medici family. He completed his first 2 works there, and then he moved on to carve 3 sculptures for the shrine of St. Dominic. He went to Rome in 1496 when he was 21, and there he sculpted Pieta. In 1504, he completed his most famous sculpture, David, which I will cover later. In 1505, he went back to work on the tomb for Pope Julius II, and during that time he completed his painting of the ceiling on the Sistine Chapel. And he died on February 18th at age 88 in present-day Italy. His style was more sophisticated and complex, which showed even when he was young. He became an expert in showing the human form. He studied bodies and learned exactly how they looked. He even got permission to study human corpses to learn the anatomy of them, which later even affected his health negatively. He left behind a style known as mannerism, which is sophisticated in idealizing the human body. Many artists, such as Raphael, were strongly influenced by him, and he dramatically influenced the future of ceiling paintings and how they were done when he did the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Okay, so his first famous work is David. He was commissioned to create David by those who upkept the cathedral in Florence. The traditional way of showing David was more victorious, like after he had defeated the giant. But he broke away from that by showing him before his victory, which were looking more timid and nervous, doubting himself if he could actually defeat the giant. This became a symbol of both strength and youthful beauty. The next one is the Sistine Chapel ceiling. It contains over 300 figures and it's over 500 square meters. This took him 4 years to complete, and he did it lying on his back. All of the scenes are from the book of Genesis, and this is a good example of how well he knew the human form. His next famous work is Pieta. He was commissioned to do this in 1496, and it was going in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. This was a main launch to his career. It really brought fame to him. It depicts the Virgin Mary holding the body of her son after he was crucified. And it was so popular because multi-figure sculptures were rare and because of the way that he made stone looked like it was draped like cloth. People were really drawn to that. And his next one is St. Peter's Basilica. This was an architectural work, not an artwork. This was his most famous architectural work. He was 74 years when he took over after Antonio de Sanghello died. It's located in Vatican City, and he died before it was even completed, but his design had a huge impact on how it was completed even after he died. Okay, now moving on to Leonardo da Vinci. He was born on April 15th in Vinci, Republic of Florence. He is an Italian scientist, mathematician, engineer, inventor, painter, sculptor, architect, musician, and writer. He was actually a legitimate son born outside of marriage between a notary, who was his father, and a peasant girl. And he was famous during the High Renaissance movement. Okay, this is a briefing of his life. At the age of 14 was when he started his first apprentice with Verrocchio. At 20, he was qualified as a master in arts and science. He continued to collaborate with Verrocchio even after he got his own workshop because they had connected so well. His earliest work was pen and ink of the Arano Valley, drawn on the August 5th of 1473. He worked in Milan for years, where he was commissioned to paint Virgin of the Rocks and The Last Supper. On his return to Florence in 1500, he created the cartoon of the Virgin and the Child. In 1502, he acted as a military architect and engineer for the son of Pope Alexander VI. And then in 1504, he was part of a committee that was formed to move Michelangelo's statue of David against his will. And then Leonardo died in France on May 2nd, 1519. Da Vinci's style was more dramatic and expressive. He used his observation of nature to show in his work how he thought things would work as like the human body. Leonardo, he tried to explain what he saw. He was one of the first to show his approach towards understanding how the world works altogether, and that is shown in the notes he has left behind in his research. He developed his own style as Sfumato style, which is a lot of shading and showing depth in the work. And he is one of the first artists to use aerial perspective in his paintings. And he brought the feeling of mystery to art, like in the Mona Lisa, when the mysterious look she has on her face, that really changed how art was. Gave it a more mysterious topic. Okay, so his first work is the Mona Lisa, which is painted as oil on wood. The original painting is quite small. I actually went to the Louvre in Paris and saw it myself, and I was actually really surprised on how small it was. It's owned by the government of France and is displayed in the Louvre. The vague expression of the woman is the main reason it got so famous. People couldn't tell if she was happy or what she was feeling. It gave the feeling of mystery that I talked about. And it really shows his style with the blurred lines and the shading and showing the depth in the background, like the mountains and the rivers and the roads. That's really how he showed his perspective in painting. His next work is The Last Supper, which he painted for 3 years from 1495 to 1498. It's a mural on a wall at the Dominican convent in Italy. It is Christ gathering his people and telling them of the bad that he felt was coming on. It is painted directly onto dry plaster wall, which over time has begun chipping, so much of the painting is gone. It has been repainted over time, so there's not much left of the original painting itself. Okay, his next famous work is The Vitruvian Man, which is estimated to be completed somewhere around 1487. It's not really sure. It shows two men with extended arms and legs, both inside of a circle and a square at the same time. And it's accompanied by notes on the work of the architect named Vitruvius Polio. It is pen and ink on paper, and it shows his interest in proportion in his work, being very specific on the shape and form of the human body. The picture is believed to be his opinion on how the function and anatomy of man relates to the function of the universe, and that's shown in the notes that he left around the picture itself. And he just attempts to relate man to nature. His next famous work is a sketch of what would become the helicopter. He called it the air screw. It's one of his many inventions, but probably his most famous. He is credited with having the first idea of a machine that flew vertically. It was drawn in 1493. His design was never actually used or tested, but it provided what would be used to design the helicopters today. And this is The Divine Rivalry, which is explaining the relationship between the two a little bit more. They had very opposing views of art. They were obviously had an age difference, Da Vinci being like 20 years older than Michelangelo. There was a play at the Old Globe that put them against each other in a painting competition, which they both had to paint a mural of battles on opposite walls inside a building. And that's shown in the picture right there, was the actual thing. This was based on a true event, and that's Florence's Palazzo Vecchio, and shows the paintings on both sides of the walls, one done by Michelangelo and one done by Da Vinci. In the production, it shows that they did not like each other very much. They were constantly sharing insults with each other and criticizing each other's opinions on what they thought was right in art. So they did not get along very well. And these are my sources. So thank you, and that is all.